Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. Agony for everyone, really. Wales and the Republic taking penalties at exactly the same time, both going ahead but missing at crucial moments. Dan James' wonder strike had given the Welsh a deserved lead and almost doubled it, but they lost control. And if 40-year-old Edin Dzeko wanted to become even more of a national hero, he did it in Cardiff. Meanwhile, Ireland were 2-0 up in Czechia. How Ryan Manning will regret that silly, instinctive and totally needless shirt pull to allow the home side back in. They almost held on, but it wasn't to be. Northern Ireland looked good against Italy. Shea Charles every bit as good as the Italian midfield, but there was no cutting edge. And in the end, 2 bits of real quality saw Italy through. We'll do the other qualifiers and discuss Mo Salah's legacy at Liverpool. There's the vasectomy to end all vasectomies. We'll answer your questions. And that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. AJ on Blue Sky says, so I guess this is the sad pod. Moonlight Hanger saying, speaking on behalf of all your non-Scottish, non-English listeners, is it high time we all boycotted this World Cup? And Richard says, can Northern Ireland be in part 1 for the first time in 8 years? They were going to be until those concurrent sad penalty shootouts. I'll be honest about the voice notes. I asked for one from Elis James. Blue ticks, but nothing. And I can't pester him because Elis will be too sad. And I believe that he will deliver. But if he doesn't, Elis, you have my forgiveness. If he does send one, here it is now.
Hello, Max. I am absolutely numb with disappointment. I actually thought it's actually worse this morning than it was last night, because last night both my kids were crying and I was consoling them, saying there'll be other World Cups, there'll be other Euros. Let's not forget the Nations League. Dad's an enormous advocate of the Nations League. And I was trying to make them feel better. I was saying, anyway, Dad probably wouldn't have been allowed into America anyway because of a tweet he did 9 years ago. And I sort of felt all right going to bed. But this morning, the magnitude of it hit me. I was just having a quick look at social media. There's a little bit of anger amongst our supporters on the socials in regards to substitutions and game management, because we had the better of the game. We were definitely the better team in the first half, and then obviously Dan James puts us 1-0 up in the second half with an absolutely spectacular strike. If you haven't seen it, you really should check it out, because it was an amazing goal. I just didn't see it coming. He hit the crossbar. Harry Wilson in the first half hit the post, doing Harry Wilson things. He's such a good player for us, such an important player for us. So he came very close. But then as the game wore on, we just seemed to become very ragged. I think we really missed Kiefer Moore. Mainly because of his physical presence, because the Bosnians are all about 6'9". And it's a very, very niggly game. Awful lots of fouls. I think we missed Ben Davies's experience as well, certainly in the last 10 minutes. And then Fred and Dzeko, age 40, to equalise with 4 minutes to go. I thought at that point, I don't see us winning this now. And then when the Bosnian, when Caldalo saved the first Bosnian penalty, I thought, oh my God, we're going to win a shootout. I've never seen a team of mine win a shootout. I've seen the Swans lose shootouts, and I've seen Wales lose shootouts. Dan James, of course, had missed the decisive penalty when we lost to Poland in the playoffs for Euro 2024 2 years ago. So when he scored that goal, I thought, oh my God, we're going to win the narrative World Cup. God has done a script writing course and he's made Dan James the hero. But alas, not to be. I watched a very good documentary about Craig Bellamy on S4C, which is available on iPlayer with subtitles. And they made the point in it, Noel Mooney, who's our chief exec, said, the FAW can't invest in grassroots if we don't qualify for tournaments. So there's a big financial implication to what happened last night. But just on a purely footballing level, it was so disappointing. But we're Welsh, we're used to this. Well, my kids aren't, they're too young, but they will harden. They will toughen up. We go again.
We have got one from Barry Glendenning, and this is it.
Hello, everybody. I'm doing my best to be positive, and the main positive I'm drawing from our defeat at the hands of the Czech Republic on penalties is that it means we don't have to play Denmark next week, because that rarely ends well for the Republic of Ireland. It was a terrible way to lose after going 2-0 up against the Czech Republic team who looked to have very little to offer after they went 2-0 down quite early in the game. Then we let them back into it with a really stupid, needless penalty given away by Ryan Manning against a player who was running away from goal and out of play. But these things happen. Now is not the time for finger pointing and recriminations, although I do see there's a lot of that going on online. The general mood in Ireland seems to be split between those calling this one of the greatest bottle jobs in the history of Irish sport and those who thought it was a good effort by a plucky team of underdogs who did well just to get into this playoff. I'm somewhere in the middle, I suppose. But we had the Czech Republic on the ropes and we lost, so that ain't good, is it? Anyway, as I said, it means we don't have to play Denmark and we won't have to play in the searing midday heat in Mexico or at altitude in Mexico, which is, I think, two of the games we would have had if we'd qualified. So that's that. And Ireland, Wales and Northern Ireland free World Cup, which is a shame, but there you go. Enjoy the rest of the pod.
And I suppose, Nedum, you're watching both these shootouts at the same time, and Wales got, Darlow saves one and Kelleher saves one, and it's looking so good. And it is just that sign that football is just, and penalty shootouts especially, are just so cruel.
Yeah, absolutely they are. But I was watching the Wales one primarily, and like Ashley Williams was making the point that, it's the best way to win and the worst way to lose at the same time. I think the fact that, say, from the Welsh perspective and the Irish perspective, that you had the high, it's like, we're going to do this, it's only 5 penalties, we've got the advantage. Then all of a sudden the advantage just like disappears. And through all this as well, I've got to say, as somebody who never took a penalty in their career, I'm really happy I never took a penalty in my career, because the stress of it all is so much. Even now, for example, with my kids playing football and they're like less than 10 years old, the stress of a penalty shootout at that age, it like never goes away, does it? But it's such a shame for the two of them to be essentially having the game turn at the same time and the penalty shootout turn at the same time, and going from a belief that, because you can't help but be caught up in the emotion of it. You say Darlow saves that first penalty, we're that much closer to the World Cup. It's going to happen. We're playing at home. Everything's going to be great. And then before you know it, it's just like tears and sadness, because the 4-year cycle almost begins all over again after this special friendly in the next game, we could say, which is a shame in itself, is it not, Max?
Yeah, it is. I don't know. And like, as a neutral, you want the home nations to go through, right? It's just good if they're in the World Cup for us, and I think for everyone in the UK. I don't know. I never feel comfortable Wilson over a Brennan Johnson shot, and so when he's lining up for a penalty, I'm not comfortable. I don't know if that's fair or not.
I have no idea what his penalty record is, but he's always been a slightly odd player for me. I never quite understood how he scored as many goals as he did, because he just seemed to do one thing that wasn't actually that difficult by the standards of professional football over and over again. I was watching the Ireland game, so I only picked this up afterwards, but
But the Ireland one had the same thing, didn't it? The Ireland one had exactly the same thing, right? You have that feeling you're there, basically.
The Ireland game, if you look back at the WhatsApp group, I suggested at 7:54 this had heartbreak written all over it, because Ireland was so on top and not scoring. They did admittedly then score twice, It was perhaps even slightly more heartbreaking than I was picturing it being. But there was an air of doom about Ireland right from the start.
You've represented basically the whole football community to when you say like, oh, I didn't fancy this person to score a penalty. Like, we see them like miss penalties all the time. Like, what is that instinct?
I don't know.
I feel like we just like project our insecurities like onto these players as they're coming out. Thankfully, they don't feel them. But say, for example, from a Welsh perspective, who could you name the 5 penalty takers you'd want to see it come up that you'd guarantee would score a goal?
Well, that's the
any
interesting
team
thing
in that
is,
situation.
There are probably Wales players that I just don't have an opinion of. So
they're better penalty takers because you have no opinion on them. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's a totally, and obviously, if he puts it in the bottom corner, I'm not here going, I never fancy Brendan Johnson over a shot, But at that point, you're right. It's complete recency bias. It's what happened, telling the narrative. But yeah, you're coming to my defense.
I think you do pick up aspects of body language, don't you? And I think often this is not even a conscious process. When you sort of, and this happens, it's not just in penalty shootouts, it's in everyday life. You see people, and there's things about the way they move, the way they look, the way they carry themselves, that you're picking up signals from them. And it's so deeply ingrained on us that it can be quite hard to articulate. But there's a spectrum, right? So I don't know if you remember the penalty shootout at the end of the 2012 Africa Cup of Nations final when Zambia beat Ivory Coast. And that was a penalty shootout that I think it went to 11 penalties each. So everybody in both sides had to take a penalty. And it got to the 10th Ivorian penalty. And Kolo Touré was going forward. And Francois Azzurri, the Ivory Coast coach, he's screaming at him, go back, Gervinho's got to take this. And you can see Kolo Touré look at him going, Gervinho doesn't want to take this. Like, he's literally hiding. And so Kolo Touré turns around, walks back to the centre circle, and Gervinho won't move. So Kolo Touré then has to go forward again. And so that walk, which everybody says is the worst walk in football, Kolo Touré's done it twice. And sure enough, he misses. Zambia then missed their kick. And then Gervinho has to take it because he's the 11th man. And guess what? He misses it. So at one end of the spectrum is Gervinho in that circumstance, who has made it as clear as he possibly could he did not want to take a penalty. In 2015, when Ivory Coast win it on penalties against Ghana in the final, he's substituted near the end. I think it's near the end of extra time to make sure he doesn't have to take a penalty. And he gets a plastic chair, puts it down behind the dugout and faces the crowd. Gervinho won't even watch it. He's just sitting there with his head on his chest, with his hands over his ears. So Gervinho is at one end of the spectrum where you can absolutely see this man does not fancy this penalty. Who would be at the other end? I don't know. Ivan Toney, maybe. Yeah.
Ivan Toney.
And then you get people in the middle. And I'd say Brennan Johnson is, if desperate to take a penalty is at the far left and terrified to take a penalty is at the far right, Brennan Johnson is definitely on the right-hand side of that scale.
That's an interesting scale, the Gervinho-Toney scale that can now live forever. You watched the Wales game, Will, and I suppose it's like afterwards Craig Bellamy just said they just sort of let it go, didn't they? Because they were in control. Dan James' goal is absolutely brilliant. He hits the bar again. They have other chances. But just as the game went on, they just sort of... Bellamy said they let it become chaos and they didn't want that to happen.
Yeah, they started really aggressively on the front foot, chasing everything down. Dan James, probably a sort of weird mix of the benefit of not of playing many minutes this season, that he looked quite fresh and lively, but then that caught up with him later on and he had to go off because I think for Leeds, I don't think he's played 90 minutes, cumulatively over the past sort of 6 months, basically. So, the problem of not having a central striker with Kiefer Moore injured was another issue for them. So they had Harry Wilson in there and David Brooks, another one who's not getting too many minutes. But they were really good, energetic. It looked first half, in this sort of post-Bale era, that Harry Wilson, having the season of his life, was the man that was going to do something for them, hit the bar and whatnot. And they were really good, and they probably should have been ahead in, earlier on. And then obviously that Dan James strike just takes the goalkeeper by complete surprise. He wasn't set. He tried to set himself and sort of slipped a bit, and by that it was done because he'd hit it so well. Double sides of being a goalkeeper, that you make that incredible save, and I think you have to say he was at fault for the equaliser.
It's sort of Seaman from it's on the Seaman Pesca-Solido scale, isn't it? Some way.
It's so close, and it's actually it's not like it's. A lot of time when it's so close, it just hits him and the keeper's in the right position. He's had to dive, full outstretch. It's an incredible save. And then obviously comes for the corner and doesn't get it. So the players tired for Wales, Cullen and Harris, not the same level as James and Brooks and players like that. And, Sorba Thomas came on and looked really dangerous down the left and was put, some good deliveries, but he was looking for Kiefer Moore, which was problematic because he wasn't there, as he just didn't have the height in the box. And, James hit the bar, Wilson had a really good chance, so it was blocked. And that's it. It's fine margins. It's just, a bit of lack of luck with injuries with Moore and things, and not having no striker on the pitch for about 120 minutes, which then goes back to penalties where you've not got a strike, you're probably less likely to score. And it's they should have won, so they'd be disappointed. But I think go out in disgrace at least.
So interestingly, in fact, not for this game, just for this last couple of years in particular for me, as somebody who is relatively recently retired, if that makes sense. Like, we're talking about Carl Darlow, and I remember Carl Darlow because I scored a goal against him 12 years ago in the Championship, and now here he is, he was on the verge of potentially going to the World Cup, and on the sideline, the coach is Craig Bellamy, who I played with at City, and then he's having an argument with Edin Dzeko, who I also played with at City, but who also, what I'll say is, Edin Dzeko in the air, he's not, I feel like, because he's older, a lot of his legacy is like a long time ago and stuff, but he scores a goal as important as Sergio Aguero's in 2012 for Man City. It's a header in the 91st minute or something. Yeah. And to speak from experience, it was me that was supposed to be marking him. So I know he can get up in the air late in games to get things done. So the fact that he did it again yesterday at the age of 40, for him to still be leading the line for his national team and to have that sense of pride that he has, and they all have, I was impressed by Bosnia, not necessarily because of, say, their in-game approach in terms of trying to win the game, especially as time went by, but like I think sometimes we can get lost in the idea of like the home nations and seeing things through that lens. But for those Bosnians going to play against Wales in that environment, with them pushing the way that they did and committing everything that they had to try and stop Wales from winning this game of football, to give themselves a chance and to score as late as they did with that, as I say, with that Dzeko header, is impressive. It's very, very impressive. Some of these stories and the storylines just going through the people involved and so on. Like I was impressed with how hard they had to fight for that, because I think another side with a little bit less commitment probably gets rolled over by Wales, because Wales, I thought, on the day actually played pretty well. Yeah.
Did that make you think you retired too early?
No, not at all. Okay. Absolutely not. No, because I can't play for Wales nor Bosnia, so I wouldn't have been involved anyway.
Nico Williams as well. I don't know. He misses another penalty, and we can't just point at Brennan Johnson. Okay, Nico Williams was on target. That Wilson chance is so big as well, isn't it, Wilson? Not you, Harry, but I thought he just had so much time. If he takes that earlier, I think he scored.
Yeah, I mean, if Elis has provided the voice note, I'm sure he will reflect on, this is another one in the great catalogue of Welsh what might have beens. I don't think any other nation has been so close so often to major tournaments and failed to get there because of a terrible refereeing decision, a brilliant save, a brilliant goal, an inexplicable miss. And this is, I mean, I won't start going through them because Elis may already have gone through them. But you think of the Paul Bowden penalty miss against Romania in 93. And there's so many of these moments that are just part of Welsh law. And there's 3 or 4 from last night that can go in that list as well.
God, you can still see Paul Bowden looking sad after that penalty. I mean, he strikes it incredibly well, doesn't he? Wales fans do not want to hear us talking about Paul. They're feeling bad enough as it is before we bring up Paul Bowden in that moment. The Republic, I mean, it was an attritional game of football, Wilson, wasn't it?
I mean, you're using attritional there when you mean terrible. It was one of the worst games of football I've seen in years.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, actually, the first sort of half hour or so, Ireland were very good. I mean, the last hour plus extra time was terrible. The bit where Ireland were good was good. And I was amazed by how bad Czechia were. I was amazed by how dominant Ireland were. The Czechs couldn't deal with Ogbene. Troy Parrott's movement was causing them all kinds of bother. And 2-0 up, you think, well, I mean, at 2-0 up, I was almost thinking, do I commit another £2.49 to watch another game because this one feels like it's over? And as that thought went through my head, Ryan Manning makes that needless foul and gives away a daft penalty.
Yeah. And Barry's brought that up, that penalty already, but I feel for him because it's so needless, but it is instinctive, right? I mean, Nedum will know this better than any of us, but even at any level, there are just times where you just do something where you just think, oh shit, I've done that. And that is what Ryan Manning's done, isn't it, Nedum?
I've never done that in my life, never in my career. I don't know why you came to me on that one. That is a disgrace that you've done that. I've definitely not done that many times in games and been penalised for it. But again, talking about another former teammate, Ryan Manning. This is all about me.
Here we go.
I appreciate it. Yeah,
Wow.
and
I
Ryan
you
is
brought
very,
everything together here. This is great.
Yeah. Like, exactly. Yeah, this is why you bring me on. The only reason. But yeah, I agree. There's sometimes, like, from the outside, people see somebody make that decision, wonder why they did it, why they did not think it through. But it's a split-second decision, and your instincts do just kick in. And Ryan's somebody who, like it is as the case of others, like, they're hugely competitive to where they can't just let things happen. They always want to be involved. They have to be involved. They have to be engaged with some level of defending. And unfortunately for him, on that particular occasion, that instinct has led to that moment. I'm sure in some ways he regrets it. And in times gone by, maybe he would have gotten away with it. Times, for example, because he started off in the Championship. Obviously, he's had a spell in the Premier League, but back in the Championship now, like, maybe that doesn't really get seen. Maybe it doesn't get reviewed, that type of stuff. But on that stage, you need to try and turn off some of those instincts. But unfortunately, it just wasn't the case for him yesterday.
Yeah, I did feel, Wilson, I did think they'd hang on, though. I mean, I was watching both games saying, okay, they're both going to get through. This is good. And I didn't see, even though Czechia were, putting the pressure on, I just didn't see where the goal was coming from.
They had so much pressure in that second half.
Yeah.
And Ireland just lost all capacity to get out of their own half, which I don't know what happened. I don't know why the game changed so radically on that one moment, because Ireland was so in control. But by the second half, they couldn't hold the ball in the Czechia half at all. I don't know if Ogbene got tired, but he became a lot less effective and eventually taken off. So, clearly they could have held out. It's a slightly odd header from a free kick that Krejci sort of almost turns away from goal and it comes off the back of his head. I'm not sure if he knew exactly what he was doing there, but it's an annoying goal in the sense that it just didn't really feel planned. I guess you can say the Irish second goal didn't really feel planned. It sort of just a ball into a dangerous area and it bobs about. And that, I think, was the real issue of the game, just lack of quality from both sides in the final third. That you think, 4 goals, it must have been quite good, but it's 2 penalties, and both penalties are sort of for nothing.
Really?
I mean, the Ireland penalty would never have been given without VAR. I mean, it's like the Harry Kane penalty in the Euro 2024 semi-final. And there was a good minute of play after that before it's eventually given. And I sort of saw it in real time. I was like, that might be one of those horrible modern penalties. And then the game sort of moves on and you're always forgotten about it. And they go back and say, I think that probably is. So it's 2, not dodgy penalties because they are both fouls, but two penalties that haven't really been created. They just sort of happened. Two set plays and really not much else. And that did make me worry a bit about this World Cup. That has the expansion of 48 teams let in too many sides that don't really have much about. I think 8 groups of 4 was perfect. 32 teams. Every game, almost every game matters with 2 of the 4 to go through. What we've got now is we've got 48 teams, some of which are not very good. It's going to be very hard for a half-decent team not to go through, because one win will take you through with eight of the best third place.
Pretty much. You could be unlucky. There will be someone whose goal difference is bad enough. I actually did a spreadsheet and to plot England's route to the final. I wrote a column about it. But I did, Scotland beat Haiti in my spreadsheet, but they didn't get through on goal difference. But you're right, one win is probably enough.
So you then get a last 32 that's not going to be very different from the 32 teams we've seen at other World Cups, except they're not going to be a group stage. You don't have that security to make sure the better teams do prevail. You've got 16 knockout games, and it's entirely possible quite a bad team can draw 2 games 0-0, win on penalties, and they're in the quarter-final. And that suggests to me there's a possibility we could have a really weird set of quarter-finalists, not because they're suddenly good.
Or last 16.
I mean, I'm suggesting it could happen twice, but yeah, sure, last 16.
To get through that one.
And then people go, look, this justifies the expansion because, I don't know, Uzbekistan and Jordan have both got to the semis. If they've got there by winning one group game and then 2-0 draws and penalties, which is what could happen, I think it introduces the randomness and the jeopardy at the wrong stage. So I think because of that, people will be aware of that, and I think the football in the last 32 and last 16 could be extremely defensive.
I mean, it is unlikely that Jordan and Uzbekistan will be in the semi-finals.
I say quarterfinals, but
quarterfinals. Fine. Well, still my point still remains valid. You're right, and actually, you're right. If you're going to have 48, you might as well have 64, right? Because then at least its top two go through. Although that's a lot
and the
of
strain on infrastructure. I mean, you should just have 32 because that's the right number. You can fiddle about with the final round of qualifying to try and give teams from the confederations which only get 5 or 6 slots to give them more of a chance. You can make that final phase of qualifying more global to try and not make it quite so Euro South American centric. But 32 is the right number.
Okay, well, I'll see what I can do. That'll do for part 1. Part 2, we'll begin with Northern Ireland's defeat in Italy. Welcome to part 2 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Northern Ireland lost 2-0 to Italy. I thought, Nedum, they were good. Like, I like Shea Charles. I thought Ethan Galbraith was really good. They play good football, right? It was not attritional. It was like they move the ball well, but once they get to the final third, it's a bit like, there isn't anyone there.
Yeah, I think to say there's nobody there feels a bit harsh, but especially at the national stage. But if that's what you want to say, Max, then that's Max Rushden. Everybody, he says they've got nothing. Okay,
nothing is harsh. I agree, but that was the vibe I got. Was the vibe was? But the thing I thought, if now you've attacked me, is
listen, that reveals a lot. If you think you're being attacked, but carry on.
I thought they were just as good as Italy for in big parts of this game. I didn't think there was a discernible difference in the quality of these teams, apart from the moments where Italy scored goals, which is an important part of football, granted.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We're back on the same page now.
Yeah, good, nice.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the differences between sides, that is at times subtle, but when you look back, it's quite clear. It's the ability to create chances against sides who defensively are good. But then also, like the discussion around sort of the finishing, the final pass and so on, that's like the last piece of the whole thing. Because realistically, even though it might not necessarily be the best back four in the world, the four of us could play at the back and be committed and throw ourselves towards things. The four of us probably aren't going to create a ton of chances against really good sides. I don't think I could be wrong. I've not seen you guys in full flight.
Not these days.
Well, are you more likely to be able to block a shot? Or take a shot and score?
More likely to be able to block it. But it's more like the shot will hit me rather than me blocking it.
Yeah. So if we use you as an example of like a mannequin, if you were to be a mannequin in the space of the 6-yard box, the ball could hit you, and technically speaking, that is a block. However, the other side of things, to be creative and to find solutions to break teams down who are also very, very committed, I think that's what the difference can be. And that's how I saw this Northern Ireland game, as you were saying, Max, because the players for Northern Ireland, they're good players. They can score from anywhere. They can do however they please. But it's that last section, like the Moise Kean goals. For me, it's a great goal. It's a great finish. It's a great moment. He'd been persistently playing on the shoulder, and he'd had a couple of efforts beforehand, which were saved well. But that one is different because he's come back onto his left side and he's finished it into the corner. That's a big moment. The ball dropping to Tonali and the technique to get over it and keep the ball low. And to take that first time, that's like real quality. And the Northern Ireland players, they couldn't all do that, but it's a lot more difficult to do it in the moment when it's needed. And I think that ended up being the difference between the two sides. Just key moments and key actions that make a big difference. And, now Italy are into that, I'd say, that final to try and get to the World Cup for the first time in the 3 attempts. So I'd be disappointed if I was Northern Ireland, because they know that the difference isn't great. But it's enough. That's the thing. It's enough, especially when you are playing away from home. You have to be clinical in both boxes. And I thought defensively they were good, but in attack, as you sort of alluded to, in a violent way, they just didn't really, they couldn't really create the stuff that they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, Will, Italy have missed 2 World Cups. And it is good to have Italy at a World Cup, right? It's a good kit there. It's a good set of,
Hey, you can buy the kit anyway, Max. Don't worry about that.
No, I know, but anyway. If you grow up watching the World Cup and you think of Tardelli and Schillaci, etc., Italy being in the World Cup is good. Obviously, it makes a big difference to the group that they go in. I don't have that in front of me, and that would have probably changed the spreadsheet that I just gave defeats to all the playoff teams. But now they're past this and now they can't play Wales, I suspect a lot of people would like to see Italy there, Will.
I did quite enjoy Nedum as well, wanting to own a back four with us. I've not got them on the list.
I was looking at it going, well, clearly me and Nedum have got to be the centre backs, right? Because I've got a bit of height here. And then I'm just, Wilson, I can't see Wilson kicking it with his left foot. So that puts you at left back, Will. And I don't know if you're an overlapping left, but it feels quite a deep back four. Anyway, to the question at hand, Will, on Italy being at the World Cup.
I mean, I think for general interest, the bigger, inferior, better nations is what you want there. As you say, there's going to be so many mediocre teams. But then you sort of watch Italy last night and you just think they're not going to trouble the scorers in the final stages, are they? They don't look like they've got the X factor. I mean, Northern Ireland are missing people like Ballard and Bradley, and they are a small nation. Let's be honest, they didn't have the quality to cause too many problems. And you think even with people like Donnarumma, Tonali, they just didn't look particularly exciting. It didn't look like they'd be problematic. So, I mean, it'll be great if they can get there. And there is always a little, as you say, a little sense of excitement with these teams being, the one teams you'd switch on a game where England aren't involved if you're English. You think, oh yeah, Italy, you do have that history, but yeah, they don't look great. So, it'd be nice that they're there, that you have a few, different options. But it's good to see that Moise Kean. Maybe, give it a few more games, a bit more build up. They might get more rhythm, but yeah, not the Italy of old, I'd say.
Canada, Qatar, and Switzerland is the group for whoever wins between Bosnia and Italy.
So that's a nice group, isn't it?
For whom?
Nice in what sense?
I mean, probably all of them, right? Like if Italy aren't, Italy, you are scared on paper, but it is not Italy of old, and Switzerland are, quite good. I don't know. That is in the preview. It will be quite a short preview for a sort of odd group.
I mean, I guess it's good that if Wales have got there, all of those are teams who wear red or white. So just to get a different colour in the group, it's good that it's going to be Bosnia or Italy.
There was a moment in that game where Retegui was put through and looked like he was running in treacle, and I was like, "Whew, that's bleak." Like there must be old Italy fans going, "What's happened to us?" But they could hammer us in the quarterfinals. I have no idea, and they might not even get there, right? They still have to get past Bosnia. So as Barry alluded to in his voice note, the best part about Ireland not going through was they don't have to play Denmark again, who hammered North Macedonia. It was 0-0 at half time. But then Denmark turned it on. Damsgaard opened the scoring. Isaacson got 2. Christian Norgard scored 1 from about 0.1 centimetres. Unless anyone has any strong thoughts on Denmark, or now forever hold your peace. Sweden won in Ukraine, Will. A hat-trick for Victor Gyökeres. And I had forgotten until you mentioned that Graham Potter was their manager.
Yeah, I mean, he'd had a few games in charge and got a contract extension, which I quite enjoyed. But it looks like it's paying off. Good move for him. Gyökeres took his goals really well. Ukraine didn't really have much up front. That seems to be sort of the telling thing in these playoffs. Teams are lacking in the final third. Maybe there's a constant dearth of strikers or something. But yeah, so it'd be, Sweden can get through the next round. It'd be useful to have an English coach at the World Cup.
So
and also, I guess,
if Sweden do get there, that's Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia. So those are. I mean, I don't know what will happen with prices, but Japan, Netherlands certainly tend to travel in numbers. Sweden travel in numbers, very colourful. So in terms of the aesthetic, which seems to be for some reason what I've started talking about in this episode, that is nice.
No, I agree with you. I think that is nice, but also Sweden. I don't know what the fitness of Isak is like and Kulusevski, but they actually could have, when we talk about the final third, they could have a lot in the final third if those guys are fit by the time the World Cup starts. But I mean, I haven't checked; they may not be. Poland, red and white. We don't need another red and white one, but they beat Albania. And actually, I don't know if any of you saw the highlights. Albania really they had an amazing chance at 1-0 to make it 2-0. They had an amazing chance at 1-1 to make it 2-1, and Zielinski scores a brilliant goal about a minute later. So I think Poland always go to major tournaments and then just, Wilson, I look to you as our Eastern European expert, do absolutely nothing.
Since 1982, that has been true, yes. And obviously Lewandowski, there'll be, as there was in 2022, can he finally do it at a World Cup? Because I don't think he even scored at a World Cup until 2022, had he? Was his goal against, I want to say, Saudi Arabia? Was that his first ever World Cup goal? It was a strange sort of. It was. There was people selling grilled chicken. There was lots of tents, and it was sort of like a fan zone. It was like an unofficial fan zone, but very clearly aimed at the sort of local market in Doha. And it was grilled chicken and candy floss seemed to be the only two foodstuffs they sold, and sort of crisps, but on a skewer.
I wouldn't put them together.
Like very finely fried potatoes.
Sort of Heston's, quite Heston.
It was and it was beside that big hotel in Doha that looked like a horseshoe. It was just beside that. I think Nick and I were going to another game, and he insisted, we have to go in this local fan zone because Nick loves local colour. And God, he loves a sunset. Nick Ames loves a sunset. Oh, it's so orange.
Does he? Okay.
He's a great man for sunsets. Yeah. He's a great man for a bar or a cafe on a hill where you can see a sunset.
Who doesn't like a sunset?
To them, to be honest.
Like, who honestly, doesn't like a sunset?
In sunset, I don't want anything to do with that. Give me the fucking moon now.
Well, they happen every day. I just don't think it's worth going out your way to see one. Maybe I'm just lucky because I grew up by the sea and regularly. I mean, I suppose the sun rises over the North Sea rather than setting, but the sun doing things doesn't bother me that much.
Sunrise, sunset, much of a muchness, right?
Seeing one sunset,
it is important that it does its thing, doesn't it? We're on Google reviews. Sunset, 1 star. Now, of course, it's Turkey beat Romania 1-0. Beautiful pass from Arda Güler for the goal for the Brighton fullback Karaoglu. They'll play Kosovo, who won 4-3 in Slovakia, which was quite a fun game. Not the perfect 4-3 because Kosovo were 4-2 up at one point, but still lots of fun. So Kosovo, Turkey, Sweden, Poland, Bosnia, Italy, and Czech Republic, Denmark. England play Uruguay tonight. So I've plotted our route to the final, Nedum, as I said. South Korea in the last 32, then France in the quarterfinal. We beat them and beat Argentina in the final, in the semis, and then we beat Spain in the final, in the heat. So shall we all just fast forward to 2030?
Yeah, that's one way to boycott it. England win, and then just everybody move on. Yeah, happy days.
What are you looking forward to this game? I mean, sort of, we were talking about it a bit on the last pod that it is a bit, as Ali Maxwell said, Squid Gamesy, where basically you've got 45 minutes to prove to have a good 45 minutes, and you might do, and that might squeeze you in if you're Adam Wharton above Kobbie Mainoo or Jed Spence above Tino Livramento or whatever. I looked at it and went through the squad and was like, it doesn't really matter who he picks as the reserve. They're all quite good, and none of them will really play.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? You've nailed it with that exact remark. The sad thing about that is, football being 11-a-side. There's so many times where they will do an 11-a-side in training and people will be substitutes. So whatever you think about, say, the person that won't be getting any game time in actual matches at the World Cup, there'll be people who'll be doing individual work for probably 6 weeks at the World Cup, which is quite a tough position to be in, especially because these players that we're speaking about, they're, for the most part, regular starters for their club sides, important players for their club sides. So, yeah, this game against Uruguay, I'm always interested to watch, like, national team games, international games, because I don't like going into tournaments just completely blind and almost trying to figure out what to expect and so on. Whereas I think more generally, people tend to tune into international football when it is tournament season. But to watch them play will be interesting to see what Tuchel's trying to go for, because Tuchel, I think yesterday was talking about Alexander-Arnold as well, and like his style of play versus what they're trying to do and so on. So it's interesting to see what Tuchel wants his England side to do, how he wants him to play, and whether this is almost revealing in some ways of what to expect for the summer. Like if against Uruguay, all of a sudden he's gone for a back six and just like 4 people holding in front. It's like, okay, cool. So this is the defensive strategy when they're under the cosh a little bit come summer and it's 30 degrees. Or is it going to be more expansive? Is it going to be a back 2, back 3 and so on? So yeah, I always tune in to watch that. But also, like, if somebody plays 45 minutes and they do really well, one of the worst things they can do is believe that means they're going to be going to the World Cup. Because that is like, Tuchel probably has seen more from the players in training that matters compared to the result or the performance in this game itself. Maybe he's looking for the way that the partnerships and stuff are formed. But if you do it for 45 minutes playing, say, 2 centre-halves together, they've probably done it for 3 days through this camp already. They do it for another 3 days, potentially after, unless the next squad comes in. Was it 35-man squad they've gone for this time?
Yeah.
So he knows what he likes, he knows who he likes, and he knows who can do it. He knows the different profile of the players. And this game is probably just a game that's just in the way of training for him. A game that just essentially has to be played for people to watch England, for England, to the FA to make money and so on. But I don't think it matters that much to him. But I guess, as you say, for those players, it's a cap. It's a chance to represent their country and to sort of put something positive out there. But I don't think Tuchel's going to be the one that decides that because of that game against Uruguay, you can start in the final against Spain in the World Cup this summer.
Wilson, is there anything in the selection that
I think the
interests
fullback
you?
issue is the big one, because England use, I think, 5 different right backs and 4 different left backs in certainly as starters in qualifying, and the left back who played the most was Miles Lewis-Skelly, who presumably is not going to be involved in the summer. So I think fullbacks are the areas where, those days when England had sort of the 15 best right backs in the world were all English. They seem a long time ago. And I don't think there's any clarity on who's going to get those positions. I think the fact that Alexander-Arnold is not even in the squad, I think what we've seen with England managers throughout time is a tendency to pick the most famous, the best players without really necessarily thinking of how the team's going to work. Well, Tuchel has not done that. And I think you've seen that with leaving out Bellingham for Morgan Rogers, that he's got a clear idea of what he wants from each role. But as to who those fullbacks are going to be, I don't think that's clear at all. So I think these 2 games will at least give us some clues as to that. And I think it probably would have been Reece James, but with the injury, I mean, at best, he's going to be going to the World Cup without a run of games behind him, but we may not even make the World Cup. And I think he would have been the right back.
Yeah, and also, someone who struggles with fitness, there will be, can you play this many games in this many days?
Well,
right?
Max, he had struggled with fitness before this season, and then the hamstring injury kicks in now, because I think he'd played more games this season than he had done for maybe 3 or 4 years. And it's fair to say, I think it's fair to say that he looks really good as well. I think he's been one of Chelsea's best and most important players, getting the praise that he deserves, because we can talk about his ability, and hopefully this hamstring injury isn't too long, and maybe he's becoming more robust, because I think if he does start for England in the summer at right back, I think he's one of the best right backs that will be at that entire tournament, and he can be a difference maker in so many sort of subtle ways, really tough and robust defensively, but the quality on the ball. I know Alexander-Arnold has got the range of passing and so on, but I think to a certain extent so does Reece James, and some of his set pieces, for me, they're as good as it gets.
That's true, but if Tuchel doesn't like, defence splitting passes from a fullback, Reece James would be best advice to keep them in his pocket and don't put anyone through for a goal, because Tuchel does not like that sort of right back.
No. But that was, to be fair, that was his right back when they won the Champions League in 21, though, wasn't it, for Chelsea? So,
speaking of the World Cup and prices, the Athletic's Adam Crafton was in Boston for the Brazil-France friendly, and has reported that the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority intends to almost quadruple its usual prices for a round-trip train ticket from the centre of Boston to Gillette Stadium during the World Cup. So if the tickets weren't enough, or a parking space, what cost $20 on the train will now cost $80. So that's good, isn't it? I mean, who knows, dynamic pricing for a Oyster
higher
card.
car, Max. I'm sure the price of fuel's going down as well.
I think that is true. Well, because of Donald Trump won the Peace Prize, you see, everything has settled down in terms of that kind of thing. Anyway, France won that game 2-1, and Mbappe, even with his wrong MRI'd leg, scored. So he's moved within 1 goal of equaling France's all-time top goal-scoring record, which I think is Olivier Giroud.
Bielsa, who started really well with Uruguay, and you have a classic Bielsa arc that he comes in, everybody's won over by his charisma, by his intensity. They play this incredibly dynamic football, and then as time goes by, they start to get worn down by it. Luis Suarez retired from national football in September 2024, and then launched this astonishing attack on Bielsa, saying he's isolated the players, that he was too harsh with them. He told the story of when Uruguay won 2-0 away in Argentina, how at half-time, when Uruguay were 1-0 up, he'd hammered Darwin Nunez in the dressing room to the point that Nunez burst into tears, and Suarez had to sort of console him. And Nunez apparently then has a much better second half, scores the second goal, they win it 2-0. And Suarez spoke to Bielsa about it afterwards, and Bielsa was like, you've just got to talk to him like this is the only language he understands. And Suarez sort of, well, I'm not really sure reducing your players to tears is a great idea. So I think, because Suarez is such a hero in Uruguay, that has perhaps intensified the criticism of Bielsa, which would come anyway because he is Argentinian and there is that Uruguay-Argentina rivalry. And I think as results have declined, I mean, they picked up right towards the end of qualifying low. They had 2 or 3 easy games at the end. I think Uruguay, it's 3.5 million population. They're never going to have consistent level of good players. And I think one generation is just getting to the end. So Suarez has retired, obviously, and Vecino's fallen out the side. Bentancur's had injury issues. And so I think results would have dipped anyway, but Bielsa's sort of getting the blame for that. And of course, their last game was a friendly against the US, where they got let in for
hammered, right?
to Pochettino as well. So player who used to play for Bielsa. And so I think there is a lot of uncertainty around Bielsa and Uruguay at the minute. But the other thing that is mildly interesting is one of the reasons this game is happening is on the initiative of the Uruguayan ambassador to Britain, who's a bloke called Luis Bermudez, who for a series of slightly odd circumstances I ended up having a drink with a couple of months ago. And he's a really interesting, nice bloke, loves his football, like genuinely is a big fan. He was going on about, we need to mark 60 years since the opening game of the 1966 World Cup, which I don't think anybody's mentioned in the build-up. But he's very, very keen on that. But he was Uruguay's ambassador to South Africa in 2010. And he told me the story that the day before their first game, which was against France, he went to the camp and sort of went round, talked to everybody, talked to Diego Lugano, the captain, sort of asked him, how's everybody getting on? And Lugano's, it's all great, great facilities, everything. There's just one thing we're a bit worried by. Bermuda's like, okay, what is it? And Lugano says that our national anthem is really long and FIFA only let you have 90 seconds. And we're worried they'll just do the instrumental bit first, but we want to do the singing bit. That's where we sort of can everybody get together. And so Bermudez himself recuts the Uruguayan national anthem and takes it to FIFA and says, can you use this version? And FIFA play it. They say, I'm sorry, it's 92 seconds long. We're going to have to lose 2 seconds off the end. And he's like, come on, it's 2 seconds. I've recut it down from 4 and a bit minutes or whatever it is today. And they said, look, okay, France's anthem is actually quite short. So if the French agree that you can have 2 seconds of their time, you can do it. And so he went to whoever's in charge of this France, and they were like, oui, c'est bon. And every game Uruguay played for that tournament, he had to ask the opponents, can we have 2 seconds of your anthem time? And every single one agreed. And Uruguay, of course, got to the semi-final of that tournament with Lou Bermudez's version of the Uruguayan national anthem.
I will say, Wilson,
thank you.
That's an excellent anecdote. And, you have a place on this podcast. As we said before, we came on air, play the hits, and it's exactly what you're doing. Part 3, we'll talk about Mo Salah. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Mo Salah announced on Tuesday he's going to leave Liverpool at the end of the season. He arrived from Roma in 2017 for £34 million. 255 goals in 435 games. Third highest Liverpool scorer ever behind Ian Rush and Roger Hunt. Obviously a key part of that Fab 3 with Firmino and Mane. And as Wilson, you wrote, he had that brilliant connection with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Jordan Henderson as well. Scored 29 goals, assisted 18 last year to help Liverpool win the title. Again, his second title with them. And I think, Will, it's when you're sort of, people sort of say he's now up there, like he is up there with Dalglish and, the great Liverpool players of all time and Hansen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's quite hard when your sort of history is happening in front of your eyes to sort of agree that this guy is up there with the greatest Liverpool players of all time. But he is.
Yeah, I mean, the trophies tell the story generally, and he's a key component of the trophies. Goals win matches. He scored those goals and won those matches. It's it's straightforward times. Yeah, no one generally has a stand or a statue built in their honour during their playing days. It comes afterwards. This is it. It takes time to reflect. Because if for any reason Federico Chiesa goes on and scores 40 goals next season and Liverpool win the league, then he'll get the statue, and that's the nature of the game. So you have to wait a few years for it to happen. But you look at the games last season, especially, there was a lot of games won by a single goal or so, and it was often Salah making the difference, and that is what you get from these top players. But in tight games, they're doing it. It's very easy at times when teams are all dominant and they're beating teams 3 or 4-0 that everyone chips in. But I do think last season with Salah, it was a lot of his making at times where he had that extra edge, that point of difference that you need in your final third. We were talking about the playoffs before. The teams that went through with your Lloricas and Lewandowski scoring key goals. the losing teams didn't have them, then that's the matter of fact. And I think we can all accept that it was inevitable that Salah was going to leave after the Ellen Road outburst. And a bit unfortunate it's gone like that, but nature of football. So yeah, an absolute legend he'll go down as. I think everyone will forget the last bits of negativity, and the montages won't include him stood in a mixed zone at Leeds. There'll be goals and stood on podiums lifting trophies, and considering how long he's been there, the consistency he's shown has been quite incredible. And at 33, he's taken a bit of a dip that I didn't really see coming necessarily this season in the drastic way it has, but. Bodies catch up with people, football evolves, football's changed. But yeah, one of the sort of players I've been most excited to see when I go to Anfield and see Liverpool. So yeah, I'll miss the sort of dynamic running and the finishing and the cutting in and all that. So no, thanks for the memories, Mo.
So, and Nedum, Will makes a good point about consistency, right? That is the thing that marks out these players. That is ridiculous. 255 goals is just an unbelievable amount of goals. And there was just last season and in other seasons, there has just been that air of inevitability, like when he's got that ball on his left foot in that arc, that he's just going to curl it in the top corner.
I think his significance for Liverpool is huge, because obviously football existed before the Premier League, but the best version of Liverpool in the Premier League has featured Mo Salah for all those years. Like the section just before, when it was Sturridge, it was Suarez, Sterling, all that stuff. They were good, but they didn't carry the weight that these guys did long term. And I think Mo Salah, when you talk about the Mane Firmino era, well, those two guys left, but Salah still remained just as impactful, and you could argue became even more important. And his goal scoring record is remarkable. The moments that he's provided for those Liverpool fans, so many times in front of the Kop, so many times, say, in European competition, even helping them get the domestic title, which they were craving as well. Like he's huge. And did we see this coming when he first signed for Roma? Or was this Mo Salah who'd gone from playing in, I think it was Switzerland, to doing that thing at Chelsea, and then in Rome? And it's like, oh yeah, maybe he'll be a good sign. Well, he's been a great sign, and arguably one of the best in the Premier League era, in terms of being one of the most important in their history. Like if you're third top scorer for a club the size of Liverpool for the success that they've had, I think in some ways that speaks for itself as well. So yeah, an absolutely incredible servant. This last year, I'll be honest, I've not liked it. Some of the stuff that he said, the outbursts and so on. But as Will was saying before, it's like a blip in what is an incredible, absolutely incredible record for Liverpool, and all those people who've played alongside him, who know how good he is, how good he has been. He will be spoken about as a legend, I'd imagine, in the same way like they talk about someone like a Steven Gerrard, the boy from the city as well. So to do that, hugely impressive. And I'm just curious as to just what happened. It was like a year ago. He was in the best form of his life. Will he sign? Will he not sign? And he signs, the biggest deal that Liverpool have probably ever given out to anyone. And then a year later, he's on his way out. It's a shame, but these things can't go on forever. I've learned that myself as a player, and his legacy. To give him full credit, after he leaves, if someone wants to do a highlight reel of all his goals, the video will last a lot longer than most other people's. I remember a few years ago, I watched I've seen the Messi ones and the Ronaldo ones for La Liga, and those videos are really long. The same will go on for Mo Salah at his time at Liverpool. Not these other strikers who will probably get like a little 10-minute one. This would be a really, really long video showing just how great he's been for the football club.
It doesn't matter how good you are, you have to have the right team to get the best out of you. And you talked about that front three, which obviously got absolutely the best out of him, with Firmino dropping back, creating the space for him. But he was also in that great three on the right hand side, and I think to be a sort of the sort of junction of two interlocking great threes, it's hard to imagine a better scenario for a player. And you think that Jose Mourinho gets rid of him from Chelsea in the same season, gets rid of Kevin De Bruyne in the season when he says, "Oh, I only have to look at a player for 10 minutes to know if he's any good or not." And I mean, A, that's just quite funny, but B, that probably does show just how significant circumstances and environment is. That you can be a 90 out of 100 player, but you can look like a 70 out of 100 player if you're not in the right place, and you look like a 99 out of 100 player if you are in the right place.
And there was another interesting stat Stanford University did where since Mo Salah joined Liverpool, I think hate crimes in the area and anti-Muslim comments went down. I think hate crimes around 19% and anti-Muslim comments dropped by 50%. So that, it's incredible impact on and off the pitch. However, if you can quantify it totally for his impact and how well he did at Liverpool on that, it's impossible to say, but it must have had some impact. Now, AOB, Baz isn't here, Wilson, so you're going to have to take the role on as Barry and a wedding celebrant for the day. Barry normally just says it won't last, so at least you are married, you have experience. Whether that helps or not, I don't know. Callum says, good evening, my partner and I, childhood sweethearts of 15 years, are getting married this Saturday. Every time Hannah, my partner, overhears Barry on the pod, she says, it's the nice Irish man. But after another 5 minutes or so, she asks to get that football rubbish off. So thank you, Barry, for extending my pod listening by those 5 minutes. If he could let her know the rest of the pod is top quality too, that would be great. Good luck on the run. I hope I can email again on the decade or so for my vasectomy. Best wishes to the rest of the gang, Callum. So it's Callum and Hannah, and you're very much he wanted Barry, but he's got you, Wilson. I know you like playing the role of understudy to Barry Glendenning. Two very similar journalists in my experience and writers in my experience. Would you like to wish them the best?
I would like to wish them the best, and I'm sure it will last. Callum sounds like a lovely lad. It sounds like he's understood his place in the relationship. I hope you have a lovely day, and I wish you all the best, and I'm sure it will last for a very, very long time.
Max, if I've heard the intro correctly, so she's into Barry's voice, then 5 minutes later she's out. That's what we're hearing, yeah? Mm-hmm. So why don't we do the whole YouTube type thing and say, make sure you stay tuned for the end of the video because I've got something to reveal. So you just push Barry just later and later and later and later in the pod.
Oh, I see.
So you could say, oh, no, it's just going to be on in a minute. Just give it a second. And then at the end, here we go. Barry Glendenning's closing remarks, 2 hours into a podcast. There we go.
I think Barry would probably quite like that. If you just say,
I'll take it back. Take it back.
Sit tight for 55. Not too sure says, which is more difficult to win, the World Cup or Football Victoria Metro Southeast Division 7? This is with regards to an Instagram story that was posted by the A-League yesterday, where I found myself playing golf with Juan Mata, Glenn Maxwell, and Aaron Finch. 5 World Cups between us.
Factual.
I don't have any of them. Anyway, it was wet. It's fair to say the 2 Aussie oafs could hit the ball further than me and Juan, but we were more delicate around the greens. The video will be out. It was so wet. But yeah, as you can imagine, Juan Mata is an absolutely marvelously lovely man. And this is a vasectomy email. It's amazing. It's from David, 45 and a half, from France. Hello, as a man who had his vasectomy a few years before the current trend of discussing the topic on my favourite football podcast, I've not really had anything to add to the conversation. However, after last week's sad news that Max will not be live blogging or vlogging his own imminent emasculation, I finally feel I have something I can contribute. Before my own operation, my doctor revealed he was being interviewed by the national news for a piece on the growing trend of men in France undergoing the procedure, and would I mind taking part? The news crew were to ask me some softball, no pun intended, questions before I went under the knife, just to find out my motivations for taking this course of action. I told the doc I had absolutely no problem taking part. On the day of the op, I'm in the hospital, and as I'm lying on the trolley in my gown, I answer the questions put to me by the journalist. They asked if I was happy for them to record me going into the theatre. No problem, I replied. Here in France, vasectomies are done under general anaesthetic, not the 15-minute in and out job you get in the UK. So I woke up some hours later before going home that afternoon. A few weeks later, my doctor sent me a YouTube clip of the news segment that went out on national television, and I sat down to watch the video, proud to be the face of the pro-vasectomy movement here in France. After a little chat between the doctor and the interviewer, there I was, sat in my trolley looking ridiculous in my gown, followed by a close-up of my face as I gave my reasons for having the operation. A few seconds of footage of me being wheeled into the theatre. The next piece of video that appeared on my screen will haunt me until my last breath. In evolutionary terms, I don't think the human brain is comfortable with seeing its host's innards exposed and being quite literally sliced apart, especially not in ultra-high definition 4K video. They'd filmed and included in the segment the actual moment the doctor snipped an exposed pipe that looked like a piece of rancid tripe surrounded by my jam and pubic hair. I vomited on the spot and forwarded the video to everyone I know with no warning of what it contained. Having gone through that, I think that you are a coward, Max, for not allowing us to be part of your big day. For shame. Thank you, David. I'm not going to search out the video, but I'm sure you can find it. And we appreciate you sharing your story with us. And
we are really pushing YouTube content now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. That is true.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't think we want listeners to send in. Certainly not like your DIY ones. I just think it's bad.
But Matt, I mean, you're part of the show, Max.
No, I understand. I understand that we're pushing YouTube content. I just don't think that's what the people want. But for the right price. Anyway, that'll do for today. Thank you, everybody.